I apologise if you hear any weird noises in the background of this video, because I'm pretty sure that there are some birds mating outside of my window, and I've been waiting for them to stop for the last 10 minutes, and they're still going and don't show any signs of slowing down anytime soon. I know you guys really wanted to know that piece of information. You're very welcome. Let's get on with the video, shall we? Hello hockey fans, and welcome back to another video. Since free agency began nearly 2 weeks ago, no NHL team has changed quite as dramatically as the Calgary Flames. Whether it was their franchise superstar leaving the organisation entirely, or their top young talent forcing a trade, the Flames aren't quite the same team that made it all the way to the second round of the playoffs less than 2 months ago, are they? However, to say that they have regressed is certainly up for debate, as they are expected to keep pretty much the rest of their roster completely intact, and they have also acquired several notable players to offset their recent losses too. But why have they seen such dramatic changes? Why have the Flames severely altered their lineup, and how will this affect Calgary's roster moving forwards? Well, let's take a look at the various events of the last few weeks and try to figure it out, shall we? So in today's video, join me as we explore the Calgary Flames Offseason Overhaul. Now, in order to understand why Calgary has changed so dramatically, let's take a look at what happened to the team during the recent season of play and the events that have led us to this point. During the 21-22 NHL season, the Calgary Flames posted an impressive 50, 21 and 11 record for 111 points in 82 games. Good enough for first place in the Pacific Division, third place in the Western Conference, as well as sixth place across the entire league standings. And how did they produce such a strong season? Well, not only did they receive great defense and solid goaltending all year long, the Flames also got some pretty hefty production from their first forward line too. After all, the trio of Matthew Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm and Johnny Gaudreau each registered at least 40 goals by the end of the year, with Lindholm finishing third in team scoring with 82 points, Tkachuk finishing second with 104 points, while Gaudreau finished first place with an astonishing 115 points. So yeah, these three played pretty well together. In the midst of this strong season, the Flames also acquired several notable players in the run-up to the 2022 trade deadline, including Montreal Canadiens forward Tyler Toffoli, as well as Seattle Kraken forward Calle Jarnkrok. However, despite their high-scoring forwards, their strong team defense and their deadline acquisitions, Calgary would be unable to convert their regular season success into a Stanley Cup championship. Though they would advance to the second round thanks to a 7-game victory against the Dallas Stars, the Flames would be bested in 5 games by their provincial rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. Being eliminated from the playoffs is heartbreaking enough, but to do so at the hands of your bitter rivals is simply infuriating, right? So while Calgary didn't get the happy ending that they wanted, I think we can all agree that they produced a pretty great season for themselves, especially compared to their disappointing non-playoff year prior. But if the Flames produced such a successful season, why have they changed so dramatically? What's happened to the organisation since their exit from the playoffs? Well, as the 2022 offseason began and teams started tinkering with their respective rosters, the Flames would suffer setback after setback. While hard-nosed defenseman Erik Gudbranson and deadline acquisition Calle Jarnkrok would both leave the team via free agency, Calgary would also lose their leading scorer too. Several hours after free agency opened on July 13th, Flames forward Johnny Gaudreau would depart from the organisation, as he signed a 7-year, $68 million contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Though Calgary had been negotiating with Gaudreau until the very last moment before he left, and though they had supposedly offered the forward a far larger deal than his eventual contract with Columbus, Gaudreau decided to move south of the border, take a sizable pay cut for his services, and leave the only NHL team he had ever known. So not only did they lose a reliable defenseman and an underwhelming deadline pickup, Calgary's highest scoring player and their franchise cornerstone had also left the team. And how did Calgary offset these losses? By signing a plethora of depth players that will likely make a minimal impact for the team. Not a great start, is it? Now, if you thought that Calgary's struggles were over, oh boy would you be mistaken, as things would go from bad to worse almost immediately. Just 5 days after Gaudreau's departure on July 18th, the Flames announced that they had filed for club-elected salary arbitration with their restricted free agent Matthew Tkachuk. When announcing this decision, Calgary stated that this move would give them extra time to try and get a deal worked out with the player, while also avoiding the possibility of Tkachuk receiving an offer sheet from another team in the league. However, just 2 days after this announcement on July 20th, Tkachuk dropped quite the bombshell, as the 24-year-old informed the Flames that he had no intention of re-signing with the team. Though he hadn't officially requested a trade, the forward supposedly told Flames management that he wouldn't sign a long-term contract with the team and he wouldn't commit to the organisation moving forwards. Since Tkachuk's arbitration hearing was scheduled for August 11th, he would only be able to receive a 1-year contract through these proceedings, and given that he had told the team that he wouldn't re-sign with them long-term, Calgary were left no other option but to trade him, a deal that they were expected to lose as they had little to no leverage during negotiations. After all, getting a fair return for a 100-point scorer is a nigh impossible task at the best of times, let alone when the player has backed his team into a corner and told them that he wants out and fast. That said, Calgary would secure quite the haul shortly after, as on July 22nd, the Flames traded Tkachuk to the Florida Panthers in exchange for forward Jonathan Huberdeau, defenseman Mackenzie Weegar, prospect Cole Schwind, and a 2025 first-round draft pick. Sure, losing Matthew Tkachuk isn't ideal, but trading him for a 29-year-old winger who scored 115 points last season, a solid defenseman currently in his prime, a decent prospect, and a first-round draft pick is a pretty great return for a guy that had no intentions of sticking around. So good job, Calgary, you finally got yourselves a win this offseason. So what happens now? Where does Calgary go from here? Well, at the time of this recording, the Tkachuk trade only took place just a few days ago, so we will have to wait and see if the Flames make any more moves over the coming weeks and months. With roughly $9.3 million in salary cap space, and with several notable RFAs yet to re-sign, it's unlikely that Calgary goes out and acquires a top free agent or makes another blockbuster move anytime soon. That said, they should be able to keep the rest of their roster intact for the upcoming 22-23 NHL season, minus Gaudreau and Tkachuk of course, and they have added several players that directly replace their recent departures, so they certainly could have done a lot worse for themselves, you know. However, it is worth mentioning that both Huberdeau and Weegar only have 1 year left on their respective contracts, so if either player fails to make a similar impact with their new team, or if neither of them re-sign with Calgary before next offseason, the Flames could be in for some serious trouble, as they could potentially lose the 2 biggest assets they received from trading their top young star only a season after acquiring them. Will it get to this point? It's highly unlikely. I expect an extension or 2 to be signed, but it is a possibility at this point in time, okay? If that's not bad enough though, Flames forward Sean Monahan spent much of last year on the 4th line despite earning over $6 million a season. So if Calgary wants to be just as competitive as last year, Monahan needs to bounce back and fast. Oh, and that's not even mentioning all of the drama surrounding the Flames arena deal with the city of Calgary. So yeah, there's a lot going on right now. Though the Flames acquired some great players in their recent deal with Florida, and the rest of their roster should remain relatively intact, are they as strong as they were last season? Sure, they still have plenty of productive forwards in Huberdeau, Elias Lindholm, and Andrew Mangiapane, provided he resigns of course, several reliable defensemen in Noah Hanifin, Rasmus Andersson, and Oliver Shillington, provided he resigns of course, and their goaltending tandem of Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladar should all help them return to the playoffs next year, but let's not forget that Calgary was just a few wins away from reaching the Western Conference Finals. It could be pretty difficult for them to repeat this success with the notable departures they have suffered. If Huberdeau and Weegar fit in well with their new team, if Monahan can bounce back in a big way, and if the rest of the roster can continue to play to their potential, I don't see why Calgary wouldn't be able to perform just as well, if not better, than they did last year. But if one or more of these don't come to fruition, I wouldn't be surprised if the Flames took a notable step backwards. After all, Calgary became the first team in NHL history to lose 2 100-point scorers during a single offseason, and while they seem to have replaced one of them, the other one has yet to be resolved. Whether their new additions can replace their recent departures remains to be seen, but I think we can all agree that the Calgary Flames will look a hell of a lot different moving forwards. After all, they've lost one superstar to free agency, traded traded the other to Florida and acquired several notable assets in their place. Seeing all of these different players in their new team's jerseys next season is gonna take some getting used to, you know. Are the Flames a worse team than they were a few weeks ago? Maybe. Do they still have plenty of talented players on their roster? Absolutely. But have they changed dramatically over the last 2 weeks? Yes. Yes, they have, folks. And on that note, I'm going to end today's video. That was a look at the Calgary Flames off-season overhaul. What do you guys think about Calgary's recent moves? Do you think that they've done a pretty good job given the circumstances, or do you think they will take a notable step backwards next season? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Lucas Gates, Raquel, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.